In a world ruled by the gallop of horses and the clash of steel, Tamerlane emerged from the windswept steppes of Central Asia, a shadow in the moonlight, a ghost that would carve terror into the earth. Born a nomad, he envisioned an empire bound only by the horizon, unfurling like a storm over lands drenched in blood and despair. Entire cities crumbled beneath his relentless advance. His legacy, a testament to the power of fear, stood stark against the sky. Pyramids of human skulls, monuments to obedience through dread. In this tale, history whispers from the graves of the fallen, asking us to listen. Imagine the unforgiving winds sweeping the steppes of Central Asia, where a young boy named Timur took his first steps in 1336. Born into a modest family of Mongolian descent, his world was woven from the rugged tales of Genghis Khan's triumphs. These stories ignited a tempestuous ambition within him, shaping dreams that would one day echo across empires. Timur's early life unfolded like the plots of ancient legends, mixing hardship and adventure with the endless tales of heroism that filled the air. But beneath the surface, complex games were afoot, wherein he navigated the intricate web of tribal politics with the skill of a seasoned player. Courtly intrigue became a second nature, his alliances more assured than the shifting sands beneath his feet. He outreached his rivals, building alliances with astute political manoeuvring and gathering loyal followers who would support his burgeoning ambitions. But these dreams were never just about survival or creating a name for himself. They were about dominance. While Timur honed his political instincts, his military acumen was also growing. Central Asia's fractured political landscape served as a perfect stage for him. He adeptly wove alliances and rivalries alike to carve out a domain of influence within the disorder. Each triumph on the battlefield expanded his influence, blending diplomacy with a sometimes startling mix of boldness and brutality, thus crafting a persona feared and respected alike. His campaigns were meticulous, designed to unfold like grand chess games in a wild terrain fraught with danger and opportunity. His journey from nomadic origins to aspiring ruler was only the beginning. Timur's ambition stretched beyond borders, longing for the grandiosity reminiscent of Genghis Khan. Empire building became his calling, a quest not just for land, but for the resuscitation of his region's former splendour. Combining military intelligence with governance, Timur laid the foundations for an empire renowned amidst the shifting currents of history. His strategies were revolutionary, drawing upon swift cavalry tactics and a keen understanding of psychological warfare. Intelligence and reconnaissance were his trusted allies, granting him an edge over less astute adversaries. The empire he envisioned was rooted in cultural diversity, which he cultivated deliberately and with great care. Cities sprang to life under his leadership, and trade flourished along storied routes like the Silk Road, nurturing an economy that attracted scholars and artists to his shining capital, Samarkand. Here, power and culture intermixed, symbolising the flourishing heart of Timur's reign. Through such crafted elegance, Timur delivered a surprising duality, where fierce conquests married the thriving of arts and culture, captivating loyalties and deepening the empire's resonance far beyond mere conquest. Power fused with cultural patronage characterised his reign, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of legacy building. Timur's splendour was not limited to grandeur alone. His strategic fear-based methods became his hallmark, with the infamous pyramids of skulls serving as chilling reminders of submission, or fate's cold chain around the necks of those who dared resist. These structures weren't simple markers of war's spoil, but were intricately layered tools wielded with ruthless precision, enforcing the futility of opposition long before his armies marched. Such formidable forces under his guidance were diverse and nuanced, comprising various ethnic groups whose uniqueness bound together under his banner. Mongolian horsemen, Persian engineers, and artisans formed the backbone of his military might, an unprecedented strength that rested on unity amidst diversity. But such harmony came with challenges, demanding adept leadership, and often a tantalising blend of terror, respect, and reward. Promise of spoils and positions, coupled with iron discipline, assured loyalty and effectiveness, the empire's lifeblood. Yet beneath the steel and terror rested the heart of a diplomat, weaving complexities of alliance and negotiation to suit his insatiable thirst for influence. Here, deception was as trusty a tool as diplomacy. Alliances emerged, fulfilled purposes, and disbanded as his motives saw fit, reflecting a fluid, complex dance across the historical canvas. All the subterfuge and shattered promises marked a delicate balance that maintained Timur's growing stature, a trickster weaving fate's threads. Yet throughout his empire's breadth, echoes of his nomadic roots resounded, where adaptability met governance in a wonderful ballet. His mindset remained as unanchored as his heritage defined: swift, mobile, resilient. This adaptability infused his governance, where a culturally blended tapestry underpinned an empire grounded both in movement and reflective contemplation. Such was the essence of his power, the nomad's agility meeting settled stability. Timur's ambition drew parallel to histories etched deeply, echoing across ages. Like Alexander, like Genghis, Timur's march was an epitome of grand dreams shadowed by looming tyrannies. His bold ambition was both laudable, in sheer vision, yet fearsome in consequences, monumental not only in skull pyramids but found on an empire's pages, a testament one could neither outrightly vilify nor purely commend. As we wander through Timur's narrative, remember, a boy who arose from the plains and became a scourge of empires left a legacy more nuanced than his pyramids could silently testify. Through the fireplace of history, let his world unfold before us, a marvel both dazzling and unsettling, carving its place in the sands of time. The legend of Tamerlane, that ambitious conqueror from the steppes of Central Asia, was nothing short of epic, rooted in his creation of an army that was unlike any other. Tamerlane understood that to carve an empire into the annals of history, he needed more than mere numbers. He needed a disciplined, relentless force. He painstakingly curated his soldiers from various tribes, choosing not just the strong, but those adept at wielding both the sword and the intricacies of strategy. His warriors were not just a collection of individuals, they were a singular, unified force. Mounted on sturdy horses, they trained with tireless dedication, mastering mounted combat and the chilling art of psychological warfare. Tamerlane left no detail unchecked, from crafting a sophisticated communication network that allowed seamless coordination to borrowing the best military practices from fallen adversaries to enhance his own strategies. Armed with such an elite force, Tamerlane cast his eyes on grander ambitions, mapping out conquests that stretched beyond his native Central Asian plains, eyeing the rich, culturally vibrant territories of Persia. Persia was no mere target. It was a treasure trove steeped in history and wealth, but also burdened by its internal rifts. Tamerlane's strategy was a dance of cunning, persuading provincial lords to his side with charm and power, while deploying his troops to crush those who dared resist. As cities like Shiraz and Isfahan fell, the tales of skull pyramids began their haunting dance across the Middle East, a grim whisper spreading terror before his arrival. While Tamerlane ravaged the heart of Persian power, he often left behind a strange calm. The paradoxical order that sometimes followed his brutal sieges seemed to stabilise regions as his forces moved on, guaranteeing the security of vital trade routes through Persia that bolstered his empire's economic foundations. India loomed on the horizon as an irresistible call, rich in both culture and resources. Here, Tamerlane faced a formidable adversary in the Delhi Sultanate, but the lure of India's legendary wealth was too great to resist. The central challenge lay not merely in the Sultanate's resistance, but in navigating India's unfamiliar terrain and climate, a world away from his steppes. Nevertheless, Tamerlane pressed on. He saw India not only as a source of riches, but as a strategic jewel at the crossroads of Europe's, the Middle East's and Asia's trade routes. His campaign against India was a methodical test, unravelling the defences of the Sultanate with not just force but raw psychological acumen, growing tales of his cruelty spreading exponentially with every victory, each conquest another precise step toward a legacy set in stone and shadow. A new campaign beckoned in the Middle East, a land rich with history and complex interactions. Tamerlane's approach here combined fierce diplomacy and unyielding might, meticulously playing local rivalries and religious factions to an advantage. Aleppo, Damascus. Their captures were less mere battles than displays of his art, alternating brute strength with calculated charm. Tamerlane's towers of skulls became the macabre, silent sentinels of his conquest. But amid these structures of fear, he sometimes spared expertise, architects and scholars who could lend their knowledge to his dominion. His conquests laced the Middle Eastern landscape with both dread and an unsettling continuity, leaving behind cities paradoxically enhanced by his rule. Tamerlane's campaigns were woven not of thread, but the raw fabric of terror, a legacy carved deep into the psyche of the regions he touched. No mere army could replicate the sway held by his reputation. Stories of his unyielding brutality travelled faster than any emissary. Survivors' tales, merchants' whispers, refugee migrations. These narratives coalesced to form an empire of dread, where Tamerlane's most potent weapon was not a sword, but the echoing fear his name incited. His actions carried harsh lessons about the power of reputation and its capacity to alter ambitions and cement submission. As time marched toward the twilight of Tamerlane's rule, his legacy loomed over history like a shadow, lingering long after the last of his empires faded into the dusty archives of antiquity. Towns transformed into skeletal factories of fear under his command, but there was begrudging respect accorded to the vigour of his aspirations. His empire was not just vast lands amassed through blood and bone, but a searing psychological echo. Civilization confronted by the razor edge of power, a relentless reminder of despotism's potential. From these haunting shadows, Tamerlane's tale insists that we confront the spectre of ambition, unchecked by conscience, the indelible mark of terror, inscribed in both stone and memory throughout the passage of time. This legacy persists, an unsettling discourse on power that asks not for blind judgment, but for understanding of the forces that shape human history. Before Tamerlane's shadow loomed over Isfahan, the city thrived as a vibrant hub of Persia, bustling with culture and trade, lined with merchants offering exotic goods and scholars debating philosophy. Isfahan was a jewel of its time, nestled among critical trade routes. Its pulsing life and strategic position were undeniably enticing to Tamerlane, a conqueror with ambitions as vast as the endless steppes from which he hailed. As whispers of his approach spread, fear gripped the city. Conversations shifted to hushed tones about the relentless invader, portrayed as a spectre, insatiable in his hunger for domination and known for leaving kingdoms drenched in blood. Nobles and commoners found themselves in anxious councils, weighing their odds against the swift, dark tide approaching. Arguments over brave resistance versus the more pragmatic path of negotiation filled the air, but no course of action seemed to ease the weight of the tempest threatening to unfurl upon them. Tamerlane's army was not only formidable in number, but seasoned in the art of instilling dread. A fearsome horde whose galloping hooves pounded like a relentless drumbeat, heralding devastation. Their arrival on the Isfahan horizon marked an event that struck terror into anyone with eyes to behold it. The elite forces displayed a terrifying precision, embodying the ceaseless ambition of their iron-willed leader. These soldiers, bearers of a grim testament to the rise and fall of innumerable other cities, approached with the knowledge that Isfahan's fate seemed preordained. As they bore down on the city known as the Scourge of God, the reputation of their leader preceded them, breeding a fear that paralysed the heart. The tales of Tamerlane's methods, skull pyramids, razed villages, massacred legions, moved faster than lightning, causing a frantic flurry of preparation and prayer within Isfahan's crumbling defences. Despite feeble efforts to bolster defence with hastily constructed fortifications, hope waned as negotiations unfolded to no avail. The dust that danced in the wake of Tamerlane's advancing forces was the harbinger of the inevitable. Conquest, bloodshed, and a change that few believed they would endure. Tamerlane's siege began with a fury that demonstrated both ingenious tactics and a brutal disregard for human life. His war machines unleashed torrents of destruction, breaching the venerable walls that had long protected Isfahan's citizens. With the city's defences collapsing, chaos erupted. Shouts of valour quickly turned to cries of despair as city dwellers scrambled for sanctuary, while Tamerlane's forces descended. A seismic wave of conquest swept over Isfahan, their actions a bold, unwavering display of their leader's will. Tales recounted by the few who survived painted a scene of destruction. A city transformed into a canvas of terror as the streets ran red under a sky heavy with smoke. It was a performance of power, a strategic spectacle of humiliation designed to project unyielding supremacy. Amid the rubble, Tamerlane's chilling command turned the page on Isfahan's history. He ordered the construction of a pyramid, a grotesque monument built from the skulls of the defeated. It stood as no mere architectural curiosity. Rather, it was psychological warfare in its rawest form, illustrating the futility of resisting his empire. Each skull, a silent witness to the conqueror's wrath, was stacked with ruthless efficiency by soldiers honed in cruelty. The pyramidal structure grew, its grim symmetry declaring an ominous decree: defiance warrants death. For those who remained behind, the edifice symbolised a catastrophic loss, a potent mixture of horror and despair draped over the city like a shroud. It was a testament to the breadth of Tamerlane's ambition, leaving an indelible scar both physically in their city and metaphorically in their soul. To the chroniclers, the pyramid was both a literal and figurative shadow cast over Isfahan, illustrating the fragility of human endeavours before an all-consuming force. The shockwaves from Isfahan's collapse reverberated far beyond its borders, carrying the harrowing tale of Tamerlane's wrath and the ominous pyramid that stood as its symbol. Fear spread quicker than wildfire, quelling thoughts of resistance in neighbouring realms. The gruesome narrative became an advisory tale, serving as a chilling proposition against autonomy when faced with Tamerlane's potential for annihilation. For Isfahan, the pyramid ushered in a decline, not only economically but culturally, as its scholarly pursuits and trade routes diverted towards safer havens. Chroniclers, tasked with preserving these events, offered narratives that mixed dread with awe. Accounts penned by historians such as Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi delved into the enormity of the tragedy, serving not just as historical records, but as cautionary tales regarding human ambition unbounded by conscience. These stories amplify the voices of those lost to Tamerlane's relentless campaigns, echoing the struggle and the terror faced by the inhabitants. Long after the fall, the story of Isfahan's grim monument affected local culture. It infiltrated art and folklore, a symbol of martyrdom interwoven into the fabric of city life, crafting a story of resilience whispered through generations. In modern times, these relics of terror challenge us, cautioning against unchecked power and leadership unbridled by morality. While the pyramids of skulls are tales of horror, they also resonate as warnings, urging a reflection on ambition and the legacy to be left in history's pages. In the shadowy dance of history's grand stage, Tamerlane, the master of calculated terror, loomed like an ominous spectre. His empire was a living, breathing organism, driven by the potent force of his formidable armies, legions born of the Mongol spirit and moulded by unyielding discipline. These were not mere soldiers. They were the harbingers of a dread that swept effortlessly across Asia's medieval landscape. The sight of Tamerlane's banners on the horizon sent shivers down the spines of town dwellers who knew all too well the chilling meaning of resistance. The temptation to resist was a flicker of hope for many, a dim light in the encroaching darkness. But defiance against Tamerlane was more than just a matter of courage. It was a wager where the stakes were unimaginably high. Tamerlane was a strategist adept in the art of fear, perceiving resistance not merely as defiance, but as a battle of wills, where the currency was human lives. Each act of defiance was met with a spectacle designed to resonate far and wide, a grim testament to his power. The aftermath of rebellion was an orchestrated act of psychological warfare. Cities that failed to bow were subjected to the construction of skull pyramids, grim edifices designed to terrorize survivors into submission. As city walls crumbled, the real horror began. Thousands of skulls meticulously stacked to remove any remaining dignity and warn the onlookers of the price of rebellion. These skull pyramids were more than mere monuments of annihilation. They were the conqueror's sinister communication, understood across every culture as an unspoken promise of devastation. Where these ghastly structures rose against the skyline, the bleak message was clear: resist and face the obliteration of lineage and legacy. Just as the sun cast its final rays on these dismal towers, so too did the lands fall under the long shadows of despair, a heavy silence marking the memories of what once was but could never be again. Each skull, stripped of identity, stood testament to lives erased, children with futures extinguished, parents clinging to hope, lovers parted for eternity. Chronicles, often penned by the victors, recorded staggering death tolls, crude numbers that barely scratched the surface of the real human cost. In rendering these lives as mere statistics, the intrinsic value of those who lived and loved was lost, overshadowed by the legacy of the conqueror. Yet the stories to be told weren't solely those of devastation and loss. Whispers of courage persist in the echoes of history, recounting tales of resistance and defiance. Through the haze of fear and suffering, individuals emerged, determined to defend their lands and their people. Songs of defiance rose amid the chaos. Citizens banded into underground resistance. Leaders chose rebellion over surrender. These brave souls, seemingly insignificant against such odds, embodied humanity's indomitable spirit, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming might, hope and resilience thrived. Beyond the bodies strewn across fields of battle, Tamerlane's wrath extended to the annihilation of cultural heritage. Libraries turned to ashes, artifacts desecrated, architectural marvels reduced to dust, civilization itself shattered under his heel. This cultural ruin struck at the heart of society's essence, obliterating the shared stories, artistry, and traditions that defined generations. Each razed city was a stark reminder of culture's fragility against unchecked ambition. This strategic obliteration aimed at replacing existing narratives with Tamerlane's own, leaving only fragments for future generations to piece together, remnants of a world irretrievably lost to time's abyss. While defiance claimed many lives, surrender was the reluctant path to survival for others. Caught in Tamerlane's tyrannical grip, communities transformed in subtle yet profound ways. Adaptation became a necessity born from the ruin, a bid to preserve what little was left of their identities and futures. Farmers continued tilling the land, craftsmen reshaped their trades, and cities shrank, rebuilding their essence both physically and psychologically. This adaptation, veiled as submission, was in itself a quiet act of resistance, a testament to human resilience and endurance. The psychological scars left by living under the constant threat of Tamerlane cast deep shadows on generations to come. Each rumour of invaders brought waves of panic, an ever-present blade hanging by the most fragile of threads. This omnipresent fear became a tool more potent than steel, embedding a cultural wariness and conditioning societies to approach the external world with suspicion and caution. Art, literature, and folklore evolved, forever echoing the legacy of terror that haunted these lands. In the political realm, survival necessitated a delicate tightrope walk of negotiations and deceits, a complex dance of diplomacy. Leaders caught in the throes of conquest engaged in intricate dialogue with their conquerors, trading tributes and pledges in desperate attempts to stave off destruction. Deceit lay at the heart of survival, as alliances shifted like sand, mirroring the ever-changing winds of power. For every tale of battlefield bravery, another spoke of council room treachery. The grand tapestry of power was woven from such threads of human values strained beyond measure. In the chronicles of those who documented this era, we find diverse perspectives, capturing the calamities and resilience alike. These narratives, some damning, others reverent, offer windows into how societies grappled with their past traumas, shaping identities and worldviews that endured. They serve as both warning and testimony, reminding us that conquest is never a single story, but a kaleidoscope of experiences shared across the human saga. Amidst the ruins of rebellion, we find illuminating lessons, a testament to the complexity of human resilience and the cycles of resistance. Despite the medieval tapestry, these stories speak timeless truths, as echoing reminders of our enduring struggle against tyranny. Each narrative, rich with both destruction and hope, urges us to reflect on power's duality and humanity's relentless spirit. As we examine the ashes of the past, we're reminded of our present and future, and the shared legacy that binds us across time's unfathomable expanse. As the scorching sun cast its relentless glare over the Indian plains, Tamerlane's forces inched closer to Delhi. The city, accustomed to the drumbeat of impending invasions, felt an unusual chill at the mere thought of Tamerlane's approach. This was not just an army advancing, it was a premeditated psychological assault, a harbinger of unspeakable terror. Banners fluttered against the dust clouds kicked up by soldiers and animals, creating an ominous, ever-moving spectre stretching for miles. In a city that had heard grim tales of Tamerlane's brutal conquests, whispered fears grew louder, knowing their fate hinged precariously on either resistance or appeasement. Inside Delhi, Sultan Nasir-ud-Din Mahmud Shah Tughlaq confronted an impossible dilemma: to stand firm and face potential annihilation or surrender, knowing the cost might include their dignity and sovereignty. Diplomacy seemed like a fool's errand with a tyrant famed for his bone and fire reputation. As panic rippled through the city, efforts to bolster defences alternated with desperate alliance-seeking. Amidst the palpable terror, a sliver of grim determination took hold. Some vowed to defy the storm, while others dreamed of desperate flight. Within Delhi's walls, preparation descended into chaos, a frenzy transforming marketplaces into energetic hubs as citizens stockpiled provisions. Noble houses and officials issued urgent edicts for defence, but fear and rumours infiltrated every narrow alley. In a kaleidoscope of emotions, defiance and survival hopes clashed, prompting the populace to look to leaders for reassurance. Yet, everywhere, the unsettling buzz of betrayal prompted whispers of discontent. Unity, a distant echo, was overshadowed by factional squabbles and misgivings. While some lobbied for surrender, others prayed for divine intervention or reinforcements. The air in Delhi grew stifling, a city collectively holding its breath, anticipating its fate despite its fervent efforts and prayers. When Tamerlane's forces finally began their assault, it was like watching an orchestrated dance of death. From afar, the advancing army resembled an unstoppable tide, poised to overwhelm Delhi's defences. Tamerlane, master tactician, positioned his troops with precision, encircling the city and sealing its fate. As siege engines rose and artillery bombarded the walls, the living nightmare crescendoed. The soundscape filled with chaotic clamour, a symphony of destruction. Defenders fought valiantly, clinging to hope, yet hope withered under Tamerlane's strategic onslaught, which aimed to fracture morale as much as conquer physically. His army struck with eerie precision, a remorseless force bent on illustrating resistance as futile pride. The weight of the advancing onslaught was no mere physical contest. It was psychological warfare, a realization that no matter how valiantly they fought, defiance was foolish. Even as the city's defences crumbled, Tamerlane's dark creativity had only begun. His strategy surpassed mere conquest. It embraced psychological torment. Captives, nearly 100,000 strong, soldiers, civilians, and innocents alike, met their end in a massacre that was both calculated and theatrical. Not just acts of war, these were arts of terror, embedding dread within Delhi and beyond. Executions thwarted any uprising, while firmly messaging to the besieged populace that resistance was fatally futile. Tamerlane's fear campaign was an exercise in psychological manipulation, crafting an aura of invincibility through enforced dread. The blood-stained streets bore testament to a strategy binding future challenges in terror's unyielding grip. After the devastation, Delhi awoke to a world diminished and shadowy. Streets once vibrant lay quiet, stained crimson, and heavy with silence. Survivors, dazed by witnessed horrors, wandered through the city's ghostly shell, haunted by echoes of lost kin. The city, a former hub of trade and culture, became a sombre shadow of its former self, enveloped by memories of an era where light dimmed beneath an oppressive blanket of fear. Yet from this nightmare emerged tales of survival that spoke of resilience. Survivors, often buried within history's folds, told of hiding in nooks, miraculous escapes, and an unyielding will to live despite despair. For each extinguished life, another survived, adding to an extraordinary narrative of human strength against overwhelming odds. Through these voices we glimpse a battered city, determined to rise beyond external and internal forces, striving against the darkness threatening their souls. The massacre's aftermath left indelible marks on culture and psyche, transforming Delhi's narrative from flourishing cultural jewel to nexus of loss and renewal. Tradition and art scramble to reconcile past glories with present fractures, reflecting a world forever altered. Tamerlane's legacy imprinted a tapestry stitched with threads of dread, illustrating how unchecked power can corrode cultures once vibrant and harmonious. The massacre of Delhi remains a stark monument to Tamerlane's conquest philosophy. The piled skulls stood testament to authority through fear, a calculated reminder of might and a deterrent to challengers. Regenerating Delhi bore the city's enduring shadow, intertwined with grandeur and caution. Tamerlane's reputation, doused in brutality but strategic brilliance, ensured a legacy that outpaced him, immortalising a legend fearsome yet awe-inspiring. Several centuries cast reflections upon Delhi's dark chapter, revealing the intertwining paths of ambition and inhumanity. As enduring symbols, they serve as both caution and chronicle, narrating a world where dark ambition ruled, yet resilience emerged from shadows. These tales urge us to learn from the past, fostering understanding and empathy as we confront the legacy of human paradoxes. In acknowledging Tamerlane's dark genius, we also celebrate the human spirit's persistent quest to rise above history's shadows and embrace new light. Baghdad, a city that graced the banks of the Tigris River, was once a beacon of opulence and intellect, the very heart of the Islamic Golden Age. This 8th century marvel, birthed under the Abbasid caliphs, was more than just a city. It was the cradle of culture and the stronghold of knowledge. It housed the illustrious House of Wisdom, where the echoes of Aristotle and Plato mingled with the hum of scholars, engrossed in translating these works into Arabic, pushing the boundaries of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine to unprecedented heights. Amidst its bustling marketplaces teeming with spices and silks, traders whispered secrets from lands as far-flung as India and China. Here, diverse communities of Muslims, Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians wove a tapestry of cultures, their harmony as rich as the intricate mosaics adorning grand mosques and palaces. Then came the whispers, at first mere shadows in the bright halls of Baghdad, rumours of Tamerlane's unstoppable advance. It was the year 1401, and tales of the conqueror's devastating conquests spread like a slow poison. Fear crept into the bustling markets, painting the lively cityscape with the brush of impending doom. As news from distant lands arrived, brought by weary travellers and traders, tales of cities reduced to ashes, and the ghastly monuments made of human skulls left a chill in the air. Baghdad's vibrant citizens, nestled in their hub of commerce and intellect, felt the rising tide of dread, aware that their storied city sat on the edge of annihilation. The tension spiralled as Tamerlane's army, a storm of steel and horseflesh, approached with a deliberate menace. The familiar comforts of Baghdad's streets gave way to an atmosphere heavy with anticipation and fear. Leaders scrambled, attempting desperate alliances and hoping plans of defence might ward off the storm. But Tamerlane was not a foe of convention, and his arrival signalled the beginning of a ruthless siege. As his forces encircled the city, siege engines cast dark shadows on Baghdad's sunlit walls, crafting a terrifying spectacle over the once idyllic metropolis. The relentless assault began, Tamerlane's soldiers and siege machines battering at the city's defences with calculated precision. With each passing day, hope within Baghdad, once a steadfast bastion of culture, waned, transformed into an unending nightmare as siege engines and fearsome horsemen worked tirelessly to break the city's spirit. Supplies dwindled while despair festered, and the citizens trembled under the weight of grim inevitability. The defenders found themselves facing not just a physical threat, but the crushing weight of psychological warfare, knowing full well that resistance might herald a fate worse than simple defeat. The inevitable fall of Baghdad was shocking in its swiftness. A city that thrived on its rich legacy found its defences crumbling under the harsh hand of Tamerlane's relentless siege. Within days, ruthless betrayal replaced failed negotiations that promised security. The breach, when it came, plunged Baghdad into a maelstrom of slaughtering invaders, reducing its proud streets into blood-soaked corridors of horror. Those once tasked with defending the walls now faced a choice: carnage or captivity. In the aftermath, Tamerlane's inexorable will ordered the construction of towers formed from the skulls of Baghdad's fallen. A task both grotesque and precise. His engineers and forced labourers, perhaps including tormented prisoners, assembled these grim sentinels. Each skull, once capable of thought and mirth, was now a silent testament to Tamerlane's domineering power. Erected near gates and thoroughfares, these morbid towers stood as symbols of Tamerlane's reign, sending ripples of dread far beyond the city's scorched ruins. What once was Baghdad, a centre of art and knowledge and vibrant life, became a shell of its former self. With Tamerlane's departure, only death and desolation lingered. The survivors, left to navigate the shadow of a city's grandeur, explored ruins that echoed memories of bustling life and family bonds. The psychological scars etched into the city were deep, as potent as the scars on the landscape. Yet, amidst the rubble, seeds of resilience emerged. A determination to rebuild and reclaim Baghdad's past glory flickered faintly, even as the haunting towers reminded all of the price of resistance. The fall of Baghdad under Tamerlane offers a haunting lesson in the potent force of fear wielded as a weapon. Chroniclers and historians, capturing these events through the lens of human cruelty, ensure Baghdad's harrowing tale endures. Works from poets and artists explored themes of ruin and resilience, their contribution shaping a legacy defined not only by calamity, but also by unyielding human spirit. Tamerlane's attempt to obliterate Baghdad instead immortalised it, strengthening its place in history. The remnants of Baghdad's fall, stories passed down through generations, highlight humanity's capacity for survival and renewal. A city determined to rise from the ashes and honour its history against all odds. Tamerlane, a figure as enigmatic as he was terrifying, mastered the art of psychological warfare. His conquests were not merely battles of swords and cavalry, but of fear and perception. Much like a shadow, his reputation preceded him, sowing dread before his armies even approached. In this way, Tamerlane wielded fear as effectively as any weapon, understanding that terror could often do the work of 100,000 soldiers. The whisper of his approach was often enough to sap resistance from even the most fortified cities. Imagine a world where tales of skull pyramids towered in the collective imagination like spectres of doom. Rumours, those swift and merciless bringers of chaos, spread tales of Tamerlane's wrath like wildfire. These stories painted pictures of cities razed to ashes, of towers built not from stone, but the bones of the defeated. The image was designed to chill the spine and weaken the spirit, ensuring that many doors opened without a single sword being drawn. Often these tales were more potent in their telling than the actual events, for in the minds of the people, Tamerlane became less a man and more a force of nature, inevitable as a tempest. The soil of medieval Central Asia, rich with superstition and tales of divine retribution, nourish the seeds of this terror. People already susceptible to supernatural fears found Tamerlane's cruelty transformed into legend. He became a spectre cloaked in human skin, a harbinger whose ghost-like presence could dissolve the most steadfast resolve with just the echo of his name. This metaphysical warfare, where Tamerlane seemed to dance on the edge of the supernatural, was a reflection not just of his deeds but of the times. A world where human and spectral threats blurred, leaving populations paralysed by the mere whisper of his approach. The skull pyramids Tamerlane constructed were both a literal and symbolic spectre of defiance's consequences. They stood as macabre monuments to his unyielding power, a dreadful promise delivered with raw, existential brutality. To see these ghastly towers was to understand in visceral terms the cost of disobedience. Towers of bleached bone rose upon the horizon, communicating the fates of the rebellious with an inescapable clarity. Each skull was a silent testament, a story of courage turned to dust. In many cultures, the fear of improper burial was almost as potent as the fear of death itself. Thus, these pyramids transcended mere battle tactics, becoming potent emblems of terror that cast long shadows over the land. Harnessing the power of rumour, Tamerlane's campaigns exploited human nature's penchant for storytelling. He spun tales to magnify his presence beyond the battlefield, using fear as a force multiplier. Stories that preceded his arrival described cities turned into graveyards and rivers running red, sowing panic in territories far and wide. Through these whispers, cities faced Tamerlane long before his armies arrived. Leaders weighed their options under the heavy hand of dread, often choosing submission over annihilation without a single blow exchanged. Intimidation was Tamerlane's favoured herald. His battles were often won before they even began. His name alone broke alliances, sent spies scampering back into the shadows, and undermined the courage of many defenders. His armies, like looming phantoms, rarely needed to breach city walls if those inside chose survival over slaughter. The very thought of defying Tamerlane became an unbearable gamble, transforming potential strongholds into stages of despair where dreams succumbed to nightmares long before reality set in. Yet the echoes of Tamerlane's empire stretched far beyond its physical boundaries. The psychological scars he inflicted became ingrained, altering the hearts and minds of those under his shadow. Societies internalized these lessons of fear, incorporating them into the cultural fabric, where they lingered like old wounds, affecting diplomacy, defense strategies, even the whispers of history passed down by bards and chroniclers. Such tales, heavily embroidered with horror, etched memories of dread that altered social norms and governance structures long after Tamerlane's death. Even today, his legacy of psychological warfare offers a stark reflection in modern military discourse. We study his exploits, not for their cruelty, but for their insight into human nature's darkest potentials. Modern strategies, though more sophisticated, still echo his ruthless efficiency in wielding fear as a weapon. Tamerlane's spectral tactics reveal an unbroken thread running through time, where the manipulation of terror has remained a timeless, albeit chilling, element of conflict. Yet beneath this study of fear lies a chasm of ethical dilemmas. Tamerlane's reign prompts reflection on the moral boundaries of warfare. The use of terror, however effective, challenges the very essence of human dignity and freedom. To reduce people to mere instruments of your will tracks a dark path where authority blurs into tyranny, leaving behind not just crushed cities but crushed souls. In the end, as Tamerlane's story draws to a close, we must grapple with the unquantifiable human cost. His legacy of fear, embodied by those chilling skull pyramids, remains a monument to the resilience and fragility of the human spirit. Though such tactics might build empires that glitter for a time, they ultimately sow seeds of tragedy that flourish long after the conqueror's bones have turned to dust. Here the haunting lesson emerges. While fear may conquer lands, it leaves behind scars that linger in the corridors of history, shadowing the future with the bygone echoes of terror. In the era of Tamerlane, where skulls stacked into pyramids marked cities and fear ruled the realm, eyes and ears were needed to preserve those grim tales. Enter the chroniclers, the brave souls who took the terror from battlefields and crafted it into enduring stories. Chief among them was Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi, who wielded his pen with the meticulousness of a surgeon and the flair of a poet. His writings did more than recount events. They pierced through the haze of war to extract truths, offering timeless echoes of the chaos enveloping them. These scribes were not merely witnesses, they were guardians of memories, sifting through the ashes to understand humanity's limits when pushed by lust for power. Yazdi's works, like the famous Zafarnama, were far from dry chronicles. They were vivid tapestries woven with tales of destruction and despair, but also with strokes of poignant humanity. His talent lay in blending first-hand accounts with a multitude of voices, painting a landscape where you could practically smell the scorched earth and hear the cries of the vanquished. While Yazdi might occasionally dance close to embellishment, his storytelling struck a delicate balance, showcasing the raw horror of Tamerlane's era while hinting at the very human frailties lurking behind the facade of domination. This literary artistry did more than just document. It made the past palpable, urging the reader to feel the dust in the air and the blood underfoot. It illustrated not just the might of Tamerlane as a warrior, but cast him in the harsh light of reality. A flawed ruler whose brutality was his greatest tool. Through these narratives, readers might shudder at the cruelty, but cannot escape a haunting reflection on the abject horror that ambition can sow. Chroniclers like Yazdi mirrored the madness of their age, providing a chilling narrative for modern readers to ponder upon. Their writing served more than a historical function. They carried the ethical weight of moments when humanity's worst instincts reigned unchecked. Chroniclers immersed the reader in a world not only of combat, but of vivid daily existences set against the macabre backdrop of skull-laden landscapes. These windows into the past facilitate discussions today, proving how medieval echoes of power and voids of morality continue to resonate within contemporary contexts. In haunting detail, Yazdi chronicles Tamerlane's campaigns while never shying away from depicting the sorrow inflicted upon the conquered peoples. Such vivid storytelling connects generations by drawing parallels with present experiences, threading together nomad tents and skyscrapers. As you read, intricate descriptions and strategic insights unravel within these stories, both warning and educating. The overlap of empirical insights and ethical questions painted a portrait of a world gone mad, where conquest and tyranny thrived unchecked, forcing one to confront humanity's darkness then as now. However, these accounts grappled with more than mere documentation. There was a remarkable interplay with the ethical realm surrounding them. Chroniclers laid the groundwork for later generations to untangle myth from reality, to assess the spins placed on stories altered by whispers of triumph and dread. Their legacy weaves through the analysis of history's memory, against a backdrop of exaggerated myths and truths. It's this exploration of fact versus fiction that teaches us how narratives steeped in horror can lead us to reevaluate our deepest fears and the monstrous aspects of historical dominion. This guided narrative, bridging empirical facts with ethical reflections, invites questions that transcend time. Tamerlane's reign, preserved in chilling prose and stark imagery, mirrors themes that continue to challenge leadership, resistance, and the shadows behind power. The responsibility of these chroniclers cannot be overstated. They crafted history, yes, but an honest form which never shied away from the truths. As readers, we're left to judge not just the breadth of information, but the ethical mirror it reflects back to us. The chronicles endure even now, as echoes of Tamerlane's ambitions rumble through modern corridors of power. These ancient tales of horror shape the foundations for future narratives, ones that explore tyrants, humanity's struggles against oppression, and fiction's passing of legacy versus fact. Chroniclers provided fertile soil from which stories of resilience and survival have blossomed, reminding us how we can learn from the past's insidious lessons. They offer frameworks and archetypes that resonate within our cultural consciousness, allowing us to explore perspectives on power, memory, and moral reckonings. It is a continuous dialogue between past and present, a sober reminder of the shadows left by Tamerlane's imperial rampages. Through the chroniclers, ancient whispers meld into modern inquiries, prompting us to consider, what have we learned? The tapestry of history, woven by the chronicler's careful hands, stands unfurled before us, asking us to never forget just how fragile our constructs of power and civility truly are. In the year 1405, as the harsh winter winds howled across the steppes, Tamerlane embarked on what would be his final campaign. His ambition, untamed even by the passage of time, directed his sights toward China, a land as legendary as the emperor's own exploits. Driven by an insatiable thirst for territory and renown, the aging conqueror led his army across the frozen landscape, each step a battle against nature's fury. The icy breath of the steppes made every mile feel like an eternity, with soldiers facing not only adversaries, but a relentless cold that knew no allegiance. Whispers circulated among his ranks, carrying rumours of the conqueror's waning strength, a truth mirrored by the shifting sands of his once meticulously controlled domains. As the chain of command strained under Tamerlane's faltering grip, his waning health became undeniable. The robust warrior, once feared as the embodiment of indomitable spirit, now found himself ensnared by ailments beyond his conquests. No kingdom, however vast, could stave off mortality's claim. Coughing fits and laboured breaths echoed ominously, reminding all that even the greatest were ultimately prey to time's unforgiving nature. Court physicians, armed with ancient remedies and fervent prayers, fought in vain against the inevitable decline. Among his followers, the cracks began to show, loyalty wavering as generals weighed their prospects in a post-Timurid world. Discussions of succession, once relegated to hushed corners, now gripped the empire as a cloud of uncertainty loomed over Tamerlane's dominion. On the frigid morning of February 19th, 1405, Tamerlane, the scourge of God, drew his final breath, leaving his empire suspended in a stillness as profound as death itself. The news of his passing unfurled like a chilling wind through the camp, where silence replaced the once commanding presence of a ruler who cast an enormous, fearsome shadow. His departure marked the cessation of an era, an extinguished flame of leadership, with none able to rekindle. Tears mingled with shock and awe. They mourned not solely the tyrant, but the architect of an era now slipping into history's grasp. With his demise, the empire plunged into the chaos of succession disputes, as ambitious sons and grandsons jostled for supremacy. The once unquestionable rule of their patriarch had cast a long shadow, now receding into the mists, leaving a vacuum of power marked by familial strife. None carried Tamerlane's singular vision or commanding presence, leading the empire to fracture under its own weight. Alliances and loyalties shifted like desert sands, unsettling the once thought immutable hegemonic structure. Calculated gambits and fragile truces ruled the day, each camp vying for dominance in this new, volatile political theatre. Yet Tamerlane's death revealed more than leadership voids. It uncovered the empire's inherent fragility, an intricate tapestry of tribes, regions and faiths, superficially united under Tamerlane's iron hand, now began to unravel, exposing long-buried animosities. With a conqueror's oppressive rule removed, local rulers seized the moment to assert autonomy, testing the bounds of newfound freedom. Stirred by dormant grievances, uprisings erupted as long-repressed tensions rose to the surface. Each part of the empire, suddenly conscious of its individuality, grappled with autonomy's burdens, or sought to expand influence in the power vacuum left by a fallen leader. Tamerlane's enduring legacy, brutal and unforgettable, was not one sculpted in stone but in terror. His skull towers stood as chilling reminders of his reign's extremities, where cruelty served as both governance and art form. Even in death they stood undiminished, silent testaments to an empire's method of rule etched in fear and cemented in death. The towers outlived their creator, reminding all who beheld them of resistance's perilous cost. Successive generations grappled with these macabre symbols' legacy, examining the tension between dominance and memory, an exploration into power's transience drawn in epochs past, yet casting forward into future ages. In Tamerlane's absence, the unity he forced upon disparate tribes and sects floundered, revealing a multicultural empire bound by nothing more than the conqueror's relentless ambition. His death stirred historical animosities, transforming whispers of dissent into outright demands for recognition. Tribes long suppressed sought prominence, each grappling for a stake in the shake-up of Tamerlane's empire, unmooring the foundation of his legacy. His name slipped from historical figure into folklore, where tales of superhuman feats coexisted with truths marked by blood and bone. With time, chronicles and the spoken word combined, shaping Tamerlane's image through lenses of awe and horror. Stories of his strategies and conquests were relayed from generation to generation, some viewing him as a harbinger of vengeance, others as a ruler irrevocably human, yet formidable. His skull towers, his grim monuments, became symbols in the annals of caution, illustrating the perilous folly of power grounded in terror. Yet perhaps the most resonant legacy was the human toll, the cautionary tale of a ruler who dramatised the ephemeral nature of power. Tamerlane's life embodies the complexities of ambition's pursuit, where the calculus of fear aligns with the human cost of empire. His score settled not in lands seized or towers risen, but the testament of chaos and order left behind, a reflection echoing in history's boundless corridors. The image of Tamerlane remains etched in the collective memory of Central Asia and beyond, a spectre of ambition that has driven men to both admiration and dread. His life was marked not just by victories and conquests, but by acts of unimaginable cruelty that have become legend. The brutal legacy of his empire, epitomised by grotesque pyramids of skulls, stands as chilling testament to the extremes of power a ruler might wield, and the terrible shadows ambition can cast. Generations have passed, yet the echo of his tyranny persists, compelling historians and laypeople alike to grapple with the complexities of his reign. Was Tamerlane merely a ruthless tyrant? Or was he something more? A man who understood fear as a language of control, transforming brutality into a tool of governance. This final chapter delves into how his shadow lingers over modern cultures, with a fascination that beckons us to ponder the nature of power, the thin line between authority and tyranny, and whether the past ever truly remains past. In the chronicles, Tamerlane, known also as Timur the Lame, occupies an unusual place. For some, he is venerated much like Alexander the Great. For others, he is an enduring symbol of unchecked horror. In Uzbekistan, for instance, he is revered as a national hero, a paragon of empire building whose gifts are celebrated while his brutal methods are often glossed over. The narrative reflects a cultural tapestry, rich with tales of his leadership, wherein he emerges not just as a conqueror, but as a formative force of history. Yet in lands where his cruelty was most acutely felt, this admiration turns to whispers of warning, an icon of terror who serves as a dire caution against ambition without restraint. Across time, the skull pyramids have become more than morbid artifacts. They are enduring symbols challenging us to consider humanity's capacity for savagery. Initially conceived as strategic monuments of fear to subjugate the masses and project Tamerlane's might, they have transcended their purpose, symbolising the potential for human cruelty. In art and literature, these horrific constructs are dark mirrors reflecting our own nature, the blurred junction between civilization and barbarism. A theme that resonates in the stories and teachings from Tamerlane's era to ours. Stories of Tamerlane's life have permeated literature and oral tradition, casting him in dimensions both diabolic and grand. Works like the Rubaiyat of Tamerlane and Marlowe's play Tamerlane the Great dramatise his life, preserving the legend of a figure standing astride history like a colossus, forever compelling in his ambitious exploits. Such stories provide cultural artifacts that illuminate how Tamerlane's reputation influenced generations, blending historical facts with mythical embellishment to convey cautionary tales about the complexities of power. Exploring Tamerlane's psyche uncovers a man driven by order, artistry, and ambition, a blend of strategic genius and obsessive dominance. Historic chroniclers suggest a ruler who fashioned himself a visionary, determined to unify lands through any means necessary. His brand of governance, quick to wield cruelty as law, is not unique. Yet perhaps he exemplifies it most starkly, using terror as a compelling force for societal order. Modern scholars see echoes of later autocrats in his methods, drawing parallels in the use of fear to condition obedience. Through Tamerlane, we peer into uncomfortable truths about ambition's dual nature, pondering the moral cost entwined with the pursuit of visionary goals. While Tamerlane's empire dissolved soon after his death, architectural feats from his reign, like Samarkand's Bibi Khanum Mosque, endure, entwining cultural legacy with artistic brilliance. Present-day architects find inspiration in his monumental designs, echoing his penchant for grandeur. These structures are tangible links to a past where art flourished, even amidst destruction, reminding us that tyrants can leave behind legacies not wholly grim. In modern Central Asia, the shadow of Tamerlane presents a dual-faced challenge, balancing pride in national achievements with an unflinching look at the darker aspects of his rule. While monuments in his honour stand in city squares, regions battered by his campaigns continue to debate the ethics of such commemoration. As society grows, so does the discourse, inviting a more nuanced understanding of his impact. History becomes a tool for learning, using Tamerlane's life as a lens to view present challenges more compassionately. This moral conundrum, was Tamerlane a villain or visionary, structures a broader discussion echoing through history, akin to debates on figures like Genghis Khan. It's an exploration of the inseparable ties between greatness and brutality, and whether cultural advances can be disentangled from their violent origins. Confronting this paradox forces us to re-examine how we judge historical figures, understanding their complexities instead of categorizing them as simply righteous or evil.
Educators around the world strive to teach the lessons of Tamerlane's reign, not as distant tales, but as reflections on power, fear, and empire. They invite critical thought on his terror tactics, as well as his innovations, emphasizing the human cost of historical change driven by force rather than diplomacy. His story illuminates how the past molds our current landscape and serves as a guide to forge a future more empathetic and wise.
In the end, Tamerlane occupies an echelon of complex leaders whose legacies defy simple narratives. As the layers of his history unfold, they reveal power's capability to create and destroy in equal measure. His reign was not merely a chapter of conquest, but a potent reminder of ambition's perilous dance with morality. The shadow of Tamerlane remains, a testament to history's dual capacity for horror and grandeur, urging viewers to unravel these tales, subscribing to deeper curiosity about human nature. And as we close this fiery tale, remember to like, subscribe and share it with those who dare find fascination amid history's darker folds.